Welcome to Wellbeing Wednesday, my live Q&A session where I'll be talking all about brain health and how you can really unchain your pain, and reflecting on the episodes that we've had released since Christmas. And for those that don't know me, my name's Dr. Ruth Mary Allen. I am the host of the show Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain. And here is an opportunity for you, if you want to, is to post any questions, any comments you have about the show, any people you'd love to have up on the show, and really any questions that you have around specifically brain health. Now, the theme that I wanted to really talk about today, which is often coming up in many of the interviews, is around self-care and also self-love, and particularly in the context of individuals that have experienced trauma. Because often what we find is when we have a trauma, whether that's an adverse childhood experience, something that happens in our teens or our adulthood, we often put all of our attention into helping the people around us that have been disaffected by the traumatic experience, and not much of our attention goes into helping ourselves. And it's really important, just the same as we have to, when we hurt ourselves physically, we tend to pay attention to it and make sure that we take care of ourselves early on so that we can get better. And normally that intervention might be putting a plaster on if you've cut yourself, or going to the doctor if you've hurt yourself, or going to the hospital to get yourself sewn up, whatever that may be. But physically, we tend to be pretty good at dealing with physical pain, physical trauma, because we know that we can see it and we can do something about it, and take action and allow our body to go on that healing journey. But the exact same thing needs to happen for us when we experience an emotional trauma, a mental trauma. So emotionally, I'm talking about where you experience something like grief, or you have experienced physical or mental abuse, and it's affected your core emotion, it's activated your amygdala, and you've gone into a fight, flight, freeze, or defensive rage response. Or for women, we also go into a tend and befriend response, and that's talked about in Lisa Marconi's book XX Brain. So it's really important that we take the time to put the oxygen mask on for ourselves first, particularly if we have experienced trauma. Hey Gail, nice to see you. So the next one is obviously mental trauma, is when you have experienced an event that has disrupted you cognitively. So you're struggling with the capacity to think clearly, with the capacity to do the work that you would normally do, to function mentally, and it's disrupted you. And often your mental trauma, it also involves emotional trauma, because they're very interconnected. And our emotional brain is the driver behind us. It's the oldest part of our brain, the reptilian brain. It involves the deep limbic system. And so it often takes over, and we get stuck in this emotional response related to the trauma. And that's our default when we experience something similar. And by being stuck in that emotional response, we also find that we can't think clearly, because our cognitive human part of our brain, the newest part of our brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, isn't actually physically allowed to come online, because our emotional brain is in overdrive, and that's the one that's at the driving seat of your life at that time. So it's really important that we understand where the trauma comes from. And then finally, we look at spiritual trauma, and this is really important in the context of COVID, is where people have had their purpose or their passion taken away from them, or they've lost a sense of meaning in their life, or they've lost a sense of connection to a higher power or to others that was previously there, and it's really traumatized them. And we can reflect on this particular type of trauma from a children's perspective, and also adults who have witnessed that disconnect, physical disconnect, with people during the COVID crisis, that otherwise was present, and that physical disconnect can really impact us. And also the loss of your job, the loss of the type of lifestyle that you were used to, can have a huge impact on your spiritual well-being, your spiritual health, and that's all related to our brain health. And it's really important that we look at ourselves across the 4 quadrants of well-being: our emotional, our physical, our mental, and our spiritual. So coming back to my first point, which was self-care, and this is really about putting your oxygen mask on first before helping others, particularly if you're in a traumatic event. Say, the oxygen mask first is typically when we think about a plane having an emergency situation, is that we take the time out to heal ourselves at an emotional level. We take the time out to heal ourselves at a mental level, and also at a spiritual level. And we acknowledge that we are in pain. We might not feel it physically, but if we don't address the emotional pain, if we don't address the spiritual pain, and if we don't address the mental pain, the mental anguish we might be going through, then it will leak out physically. Your body will start to say no, because your HPA axis, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal glands, they will all be on overdrive, and you'll be pumping cortisol into your system, and your body will start to not be able to deal with the levels of stress that you are inducing on it as a result of the emotional pain, the mental pain, and the spiritual pain that you are ignoring and not taking the time to go and seek help and support for. And the reason I really wanted to talk about this is because the guests that I've had on the show since Christmas time have really brought this to the fore in the conversations that they've had. And I just want to really reflect on some of the episodes that have occurred since Christmas time. So Chris Ross and myself, so Chris Ross is the CEO of Winjet. We talked about his experiences and reflected on the previous 12 episodes and the importance of self-care and looking after yourself when you're experiencing a crisis. Christopher Freeze gave a really interesting perspective from an FBI standpoint, as the director within the FBI during his tenure there, and how he personally had to go and contend with the aftermath of the 9/11 attack on the Pentagon, and he and his team had to go and deal with that. And he talks about the importance of trust and how it's really vital that we create an environment of trust for people to express themselves, and how that drives into creating hope for people, hope that things can get better. Hope is an incredible driver behind us overcoming real adversity. And that's a really fascinating perspective coming from his long service within the FBI. And Maralise, who talks about really interesting issues where bullying in the workplace within her time while she was at work actually triggered issues that she'd experienced from her childhood. And often when we reflect on bullying in the workplace, the workplace, the organization can often say, well, you're behaving like this because of your past experiences. And actually that's a really wrong way to look at it, because your current environment and the toxicity of your current environment can open old wounds that you may have felt that you'd healed from past trauma. And that's exactly what Dr. Philip Alexander also talks about from a medical perspective, who's a pediatrician, and he had some unresolved adverse childhood experiences, and the toxicity and the competitive nature of the medical profession really opened wounds from his childhood that he hadn't personally addressed. Maralise had had the fortune to address them, but nevertheless, those wounds still were reopened. But Dr. Philip actually had never given himself permission to deal with the emotional pain and the mental pain that he'd experienced from his childhood, and how that had manifested in his drive to be successful as a paediatrician. And that all came to a head to leading to burnout. And he talks about his journey for recovery and how difficult that truly is within the medical profession here in the UK, because of some of the stigma associated with mental health in the workplace and the competitive nature of people who are working in the medical profession. And actually, interestingly, in his episode, he talks about 75% of medical professionals are actually experiencing mental health struggle, which is phenomenal. That community is very closed to talking about the issues they're experiencing, particularly given the current crisis we're in, and the importance of them really reaching out for support, really reaching out for guidance and help early, so that they can truly put the oxygen mask on first before serving others. And the natural tendency of people in the medical profession is to serve others and then serve themselves last, and that isn't always the best approach, and as many people know, that is the worst approach when it comes to effectively serving your clients, which in essence are your patients, and offering the best care. And then Mike McCarthy, who's an award-winning journalist and presenter, worked for Sky and BBC News. He covered wars in Afghanistan and overseas in the Middle East. Talks in episode 18 of the trauma associated with losing his son Ross to suicide at the early age, just around 30. And Ross was a parent and left behind his fiance and also his son Charlie. And the shock of the family in terms of the grief they've experienced, and also the fact that poor Ross had been suffering with depression for 10 years, and the medical system, he'd attempted suicide the year before, and for reasons are completely unclear to me, is that the medical profession had not put him as a high risk category, and he wasn't getting the appropriate support that you would do if you had a physical illness that he needed in order to help him heal. And the sort of big question here is if a person is still struggling after 10 years, then the intervention for me that is being given is not working for that individual, and something needs to change. The individual can't change, but really the intervention by the system needs to change. And Mike talks about how the system, not just the medical system, but the wider system, needs to be much more aware of the fact that suicide is the biggest killer of men in their early 30s and 40s. It's the number one killer of men at that age group, and men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than women, just by virtue of also the way that their brains are wired. They have more neurons and less connections, so they typically, when men make a decision, they go for it. Their amygdala is larger than women's amygdalas, so it's likely it's much more activated and much more charged when it gets activated. So there's a whole heap of work that really needs to be done to empower men and women to be able to speak up, and to give them tools like we use here in the Wellbeing Warrior Academy, where if you don't feel you're able to speak up, that you still have the power to heal. And we have a 15-minute to freedom technique using our emotional mindset management approach, which is in essence as fast as having Tylenol or paracetamol to help people heal from a trauma. And it's very simple, and we use the 5 pillars of brain health as well, and we've used it in a group context, and it's been very successful in helping people let go of trauma. In fact, distress ratings in a group environment have gone from a 7 out of 10 distress rating to a 1 out of 10 distress rating on average, to help people let go of that trauma in an hour. And we know from scientific research that the techniques that we use are effective within the hour compared to a control group who have not received the approach that we use in our group and individual sessions. So all of this is not, people need to be aware that this support is available and for people to tap into on a weekly basis, irrespective of what your background is, irrespective of where you're from. And in the next sort of shows that are coming up, I'm just going to carry on talking through the episodes that have been released to date. So Louise Carmi, who is a Havening trainer and great friend of mine, she talks about her brain health struggles that she experienced from the point of being born very prematurely to experiencing brain trauma in her 70s, in the 1970s, as a result of her childhood birthing experience and premature birth, and then also developing a brain tumor, and how she was really able to heal from that and focus on what was important to her and not listen to the opinions that the traditional medical community gave to her about her ability to heal. And she also experienced a stroke as well as part of the treatment, and she goes through in some great detail about how she was able to recover from that and the importance of her mindset in that recovery process. And what's really key here is this self-care, is that medicine is really helpful in certain circumstances, but often it is there to help give our body the breathing space to do its own healing. And we have extraordinary brains and bodies over thousands upon thousands of years of evolution that are incredibly intelligent, we're incredibly powerful individuals. We have an incredible ability to heal if we give ourselves permission to do the work, to allow our bodies to heal. And that's healing from our emotional trauma, our physical trauma, our mental trauma, and our spiritual trauma. And Eric Granger, who is recently did a transition within his life because of physical constraints he was experiencing, talks in episode 20 how he activated the imagination and the power in his mind to really pursue something that he was totally passionate about. And within 7 years, he'd achieved over 58 awards in his screenwriting new career that he had started, including awards at the Cannes Film Festival. And what I love about Eric's story is the fact that often we see some constraint that we may experience physically as a disability to our future potential, but actually he leveraged the power of that obstacle in his journey to take a very different and a very exciting path, which now is bringing him tremendous fulfillment and joy. And actually Eric is supporting the development of the film of Amy Kardashian's story, which she talks about in episode 4. So I'm really, really excited to see what the outcome is of that. So what's coming up in the episodes next is we've got Rex Miller, who's talking about how he was able to take his family to a brain imaging clinic to help them uncover the root cause of the problems with their brain health and to uncover the misdiagnosis of his daughter's health conditions. So she was diagnosed with MS, and he talks about that and the family's journey, brain health journey that they go on, and how the educational system is creating issues for children who have brain health struggles. Then we also have Natasha Morgadise, my friend, great friend Natasha. She talks about how she was very much focused on performing at her best for her team, but didn't take the time to put the oxygen mask on for herself personally, and how that came out in terms of her body started to say no. And she talks really about the importance of food as medicine to help her on a journey to recovery. So that's coming out soon. Mark Edmondson, amazing story. He's coming up. He's going to be talking about how he defied all odds when he was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer and given a year to live by the doctors, by really looking into how he could change his lifestyle and his interventions that were necessary to optimize his brain health and well-being. And again, he took a fully integrated view of his health and was able to turn around his life, and is currently cancer-free 5 years on. Nina Perez talks about her powerful story with regards to her adverse childhood experiences, which includes abuse by her stepfather, as well as having a husband point a gun to her head and pull the trigger. Fortunately, the safety catch got stuck and the gun didn't fire. And her journey to recovery and leaving that domestic violence situation with her son in tow. And that's just a fascinating story. So please look out for that episode. And then we've got Alex Patakos, Dr. Alex Patakos, who talks about the importance of spiritual well-being and the work that he's done on spiritual well-being through the translating the work done by Viktor Frankl, which was his mentor. And finally, we also have Dr. Leo Galland, MD, who really talks about brain health in the context of COVID and the steps that we can take as individuals to reduce our risk and also minimize the impact of long COVID, and how that intervention really can be done with nutritional intervention and supplemental intervention, which is not available through current traditional medical approaches. There is no drug currently to cure COVID, but the solution lies in our lifestyle, and it also lies in the foods that we eat, particularly in the amount of vegetables we consume. So really do watch out for that episode coming up. If you have any questions around brain health and well-being, please do make sure you post them below. I'm happy to take any questions now. I've talked about what's coming up. We've got domestic abuse conversations happening and how people have managed to optimize their brain health and leverage their internal superpower to become the person they are today. We've got people talking about reversing what was deemed to be early menopause as a consequence of lifestyle factors, and changing their lifestyle factors in order to overcome that and reverse the early menopause that was happening. We've got people, as I said, talking about COVID and how you can help yourself and help your family in protecting yourself from viral infections and really boost your immune system, from Dr. Leo Galland. If you've got any questions about brain health that you really want answered, or if you've got any guests you'd love to have on the show or guest recommendations, please do post them below, because I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have now. And I'd love to hear what topics that I've talked about do you really want to hear more of? What topics do you want me to discuss? Is there anything in particular that you think isn't getting enough coverage from a brain health or a mental health perspective that needs more coverage and more attention? I am more than happy to be there, here to serve you, to help you learn really and truly how you can unchain your pain and step into the person that you want to be, and really win back your energy and time doing what you love. So I'm just going to give it a few more moments. I'm looking at the stream to see if anybody's going to post any questions. Do post your questions below. I'm totally happy to answer them. This is live, and I'm here to serve you. So I'm not seeing any questions. I can see that there are people on. Maybe you're busy or grabbing a coffee, but if you've got any questions, then please just email us. I'll just post. If you want to find out more about the Wellbeing Warrior Academy and how you can learn about the programs that we offer to really help you unchain your pain, I'm just going to post them in the messaging below, so you can find out what's going on. Yay, Bahar! Nice to see you. So, Bahar says, I'm looking forward to being more positive and not focusing on those that do not do justice to themselves. Brilliant. You know, a positive mindset. Well, who we surround ourselves with really influences our mood. So it's really important that we take the time to surround ourselves with people that will lift us up, rather than dragging us down. And that may mean that we have to shift our friendship group and decide who we need to spend more time with. And it may mean you need to build your friendship group and find the right people that are going to help you on your journey to a positive, happy and fulfilling life. So I'm really pleased that you're doing that, Bahar, and I look forward to hearing more about that. If you've got any more questions, then please just do post. If you want to hear more about anything, just let me know. If I don't hear any more questions, I'll close this live very soon, and I look forward to connecting with everyone soon. As I said, do look out for the episodes coming out this week. Is Cynthia Leiber. She's a doctor, and she's talking about her transition from working in a very difficult medical environment, which was incongruent to her personal values, where she didn't feel she could fulfill her patients' needs and spend the time with them that she needed to uncover the root cause, and really how her journey of discovery and the influence of her mother and her mother's journey reshaped what she needed to do, and how she could reshape her practice to be the superpower that she is today, and helping her clients from everything from supporting them with Alzheimer's struggles all the way through to nutritional needs. Chris Ross says, don't have a question, rather a statement. You're amazing. That is all. Thanks, Chris. Very much appreciated. I'm really looking forward to connecting with you soon. And if I don't hear from everyone, I'm going to close this down. Go visit the Wellbeing Warrior Academy, find out what we do. We do detailed brain health evaluations if you're struggling with your brain health, particularly if you are concerned about following a knock to the head or a fall, and you're struggling with your cognition, your brain function, you're starting to lose your memory and you're not sure why. Or if you're experiencing problems in terms of physical ailments or immune system issues that traditional medicine isn't able to resolve. Perhaps you may be experiencing asthma or eczema that's not going away, and you want to get a further insight into changes that you can make. Or your kids are struggling with their brain health. They're struggling with connecting with their feelings. They're struggling with connecting with their peer group because of past trauma or experiences, and they've become a bit introvert. We do Wellbeing Warrior programs for kids as well. So please do connect. We're here to serve you and your family, to really help you take charge of your well-being and be the boss. And that's believing in yourself, overcoming the adversities you experience in life, succeeding in what you personally want to succeed in, and soaring to that next level. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, talking to you. I look forward to connecting with you soon. Bye for now.